because it seems to me that there are only two ways to stop the erosion and the planned effort to take us backwards. One, of course, is the engagement of the people to the extent where Mr. Trump and his allies will know unequivocally and without a doubt that they may hold the cards today, but they won't hold those cards continuously with the enactment of their engagement. And they're not going to win. They're going to lose. And because the people united will never be defeated. And they are helping to unite people in opposition to their bizarre behavior.
That's a good way of putting it.
So
it is bizarre.
They're coming.
Welcome to Rhythm of Life. I'm Steve Ordauer. In this powerful episode, Congressman Danny K. Davis reflects on his decades of public service, community activism, and the fight for justice, equality, and healthcare access. From his work with Harold Washington to his advocacy for restorative justice and health initiatives, Davis shares personal stories, political insights, and his hopes for America's future. Tune in for an inspiring conversation on legacy, leadership, and building a more equitable society. It seems like a rational thing to want to have IDs for voting, but yet it will disenfranchise a lot of people. Why doesn't the government make a regulation so that it's just super easy to get some sort of identification? There's all these hurdles, you know what I mean?
They are not interested. Well, when I say they, some elements are not interested in facilitating people participating in what is supposed to be a democracy.
Yes.
They would like to have some other form of government, maybe an oligarchy.
Yes.
Or maybe a hierarchy.
Yes. Yeah. And a bunch of other archies. Well, you know, I hear you're retiring.
Well, I am retiring, but I'm retiring at the end of next year.
So you've got a lot more time to...
I've got a year and about 4 months.
That's incredible.
Keep working.
And when did you start serving as a congressman? And it's in the 7th district, correct?
It's the 7th congressional district, greatest piece of geography in North America, compressed into a political subdivision. So it's a wonderful, wonderful area.
Wow. Well, and you've been the representative in the House since what year?
1997, so it's 28 years, going on 29, and at the end of next year, it will be 30 years.
That's incredible. That is really incredible. I'm sure, wow, you've seen a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things take shape within the country and our political process. And how would you compare when you started versus what's happening right now? I know that's a huge question, but the broad strokes.
Well, actually, I will have been elected to, public office for 46 years. I first was elected to public office in 1979, and I've been elected ever since.
Was that with the Cook County Board of Commissioners?
I was first a member of the Chicago City Council. I did that for almost 3 terms. And then I did a term and a half at the Cook County Board. So all total, almost a half century. And it's been wonderful. It's been invigorating. It's been exciting. I have enjoyed most of it.
Most of it.
Well, I've had some good times and I've had some bad times, but the good times outweigh the bad times. So I won't complain.
Well, that's a healthy attitude. Well, what got you into public service to begin with, if I may ask? And you're originally from Arkansas, right?
Well, it's the only state in the Bible. Noah looked over his ark and saw. And so I'm delighted to have grown up in that neck of the woods. It's a wonderful small state. It only has 4 congressional districts. And I look forward to visiting there next month. But all of it has been, I've always been interested. I guess I was fortunate. I had 2 wonderful parents. My parents were sharecroppers.
Really? Okay.
Rural South. My father was a guy who finished the 4th grade. He was 19 years old. One of the smartest and most insightful people I've ever known. My mother was just a wonderful, wonderful woman. Had so much compassion until you couldn't measure it. I recall when she died that my brothers and sisters sat up half the night arguing about who was her most favorite child. And there were 9 of us. And
wow.
So all of us, she had a way she could make each one of us feel like we were just the most important person in the world.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure that's infused in you, no doubt about it, because every time I'm in your presence, I can feel that, to be frank with you. I have a feeling you have a deeply embedded spirit of doing that with your constituents, which is why you've been reelected over and over again. I would imagine that plays a part. I mean, I would imagine both of your parents were big mentors for you.
Hardly do I ever make a speech and not mention one or both because they meant so much, but they taught values. And
Yes.
those values have helped me not only get elected to public office, but to remain in public office and leave on my own terms of not having been defeated in the term that I'm leaving from, but also having, and I don't call it bragging, but we've been so fortunate to meet and know, interact with, and benefit from so many people, so many entities that would be called the wind beneath my wings, if I have any. I had a call the other day from former President Bill Clinton. Last week, I'm just sitting here. I get a phone call and somebody says, would you be able to speak with President Clinton sometimes today? I say, hell, I'd be able to speak to President Clinton anytime. And we had a wonderful 15-minute conversation about everything and about nothing, but everything, things we had worked on, things we had managed to do together, and the mere fact that we maintain a relationship where we have that conversation. So yeah, I've been thrilled, but it's a tremendous responsibility when you get elected because people are putting their trust in you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're giving you the opportunity to represent them, not only their thinking, but their hopes and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
Their what they hope their environment, their world will be. And they're giving all of that to you. I mean, they're entrusting it to you.
Yeah,
And
it makes me wonder, what was the spark that got you involved in public service to begin with? Was there a specific moment, or was it basically the influence of your parents, or was there a experience that you had that had you pick this direction in life?
well, actually, before running for public office, I worked as well, I often tell young people, they don't want to believe it, but I had several jobs. I picked cotton.
Really?
I sure did.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in an agricultural environment, and the only work that existed was agricultural work. The few service jobs or whatever, there weren't many of those. I guess I had an offer to teach school when I finished college, but they were paying not a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So I decided to come to Chicago. My first job in Chicago was working in a restaurant. I worked there for one day and left. Then I got another job and stayed there for a couple of weeks and left. Because when I got here, I didn't have much money. I had $18 left. And so I needed to earn money quickly. And the job I was supposed to get, I thought I was going to get, I didn't get hired. So I just made my way, but ultimately settled in and worked for the Postal Service for a little more than a year. Then I switched over and started teaching and found my love. I mean, I loved teaching. And friends of mine say that I'm still just a frustrated school teacher. But I taught in the Chicago public schools for 6 years, became a counselor, kept going to graduate school and earning, credentials, and eventually ended up with a doctorate's degree in health and health management and services, and ultimately ran for public office because I had become chairman of a committee to find a candidate to run for the city council. And we couldn't find anybody.
So guess what? You ran?
And I ran. That's exactly. I ran into the person that we were going to run somebody against him, and he was selling wolf tickets, He says, you guys can't even find a candidate. I went home that night and said to my wife, I think I'm going to run for the city council. She says, who, you? I said, yeah, me. Why not? She said, you're not even a precinct captain. You can't run. I said, well, since when did you have to be a precinct captain? So I did run, eked out a victory after being in a runoff. And I've been running ever since.
I bet.
And got a little stuff done.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that you worked in the early stages of your life literally picking cotton. And now you have been in Congress for what, 3 decades about? And
almost.
And that's quite a trajectory. I mean, you have, and what year about did you have that job picking cotton, if I may ask?
Oh, I got a birthday coming up tomorrow.
Oh,
That
happy
means that,
birthday.
yeah, I'm going to be 84 years of age.
You got to be
And
kidding me. You don't look a day over 50. Not a day.
well, I have been blessed, very fortunate, and will experience my 84th birthday. So I was a child during the 40s and 50s and lived in, Arkansas until I was 19. And that's when I came to Chicago and have been here since and wouldn't live anyplace else. Wouldn't even think of living anyplace else. It would never even cross my mind.
Really? Well, what drew you to Chicago?
Well, Chicago was a place where there was, when I came, plenty of work. There were jobs around. The community that I settled in was the North Lawndale community, which was thriving. Right in that community, there was about 125,000 people in a 5.5 mile area. But now, I guess there may be 50,000, if 50,000, because the community changed. It was home to Sears, Roebuck and Company, the international headquarters for Sears, Roebuck, Ryerson Steel, Western Electric, Allied Radio, all kind of business and interest. The community quickly, though, became overcrowded as large numbers of African Americans migrated to Chicago. The West area was the last port of entry for this big movement of African Americans trying to escape racism, trying to escape the conditions of the South. And of course, we had the civil rights movement to occur, led by Dr. Martin Luther King and others. And this just Chicago. The idea for people who lived South was that if you couldn't find a job in Chicago, you couldn't find a job anyplace. There were plenty of jobs. So African Americans were flocking in droves to Chicago.
I see.
There was even a great song, Going to Chicago. Sorry, but I can't take you.
Well, so and you served as an alderman, you served on the Cook County Board of Commissioners, and then you made your way to the federal level. And so, I know you've done a lot of grassroots activism in a variety of ways, and I'm wondering what that was like to jump to the federal level with all of the heavy influences of corporate America and things that are in place that are a huge barrier to reforming the system, which I'm sure you had every intention to do when you came into Congress. How was that transition for you?
Well, I think what I discovered, and I think what many activists discovered, is that change is not easy to come about. Because people are often set in their ways. Also, we learned that in order for democracy to exist, you have to make it exist. It's not something that you're going to experience just sitting back, watching it be. If there's to be democracy, and what democracy means to me, is the opportunity to be in pursuit of trying to help the world become the kind of world you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree. It means there's going to be a lot of disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a great deal of movement. And if you're going to provide leadership, I think you have to define what leadership means to you.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I've sort of taken a definition that says leadership is to get other people to do what you want them to do, but because they want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so wherever you go and however you go, you've got to have a lot of other people going with you.
Oh, I'm sure.
And that's, I remember a guy named Frank Lumpkin who was also a friend of your father's.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank was the guy that led the steel workers efforts out in the South Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank wrote a book, and he titled his book "Always Bring a Crowd."
Mm.
and his idea was that don't ever venture by yourself
Mm.
or venture alone.
Mm-hmm.
That you got to get others to join in with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, I there's a church that I go to, and I was amazed that the pastor started the church with himself, his wife, and his daughter, 3 members. And now, of course, there are thousands of members of that particular church. And so if you can convince somebody to join in with whatever thoughts that you've got and keep building. I'm pretty philosophical, and so I like these pithy sayings and all. And there's one that says, give me 10 men, give me 10 stout-hearted men, give me 10 men who are willing to fight for the things they adore, and I will give you 10,000 more.
I like that.
That organizing is a big part of being successful.
Yes.
And if you don't organize, then you're the Pied Piper, perhaps. But you're just pieing to yourself.
Yeah, and I know that that's a lot of how you and my father related, and it's so interesting when you're talking about this, and I can't help but to think, but when you get to the the federal congressional level, there must have been some very eye-opening moments, I would imagine, for you as an activist in terms of the barriers that you were up against, the obstacles rather, to try to enact some legislation that would really help people. And it was probably, I mean, if I personally were to go into Congress today, I wouldn't be able to hack it at all because the system is so powerful against reform. Do you know what I mean? Were you? I would imagine you were confronted in these ways to a degree. Do you remember any experiences or any thoughts?
Well, I think that you kind of learn quickly, and things are organized in such a way. I say that the numbers are different. That you're talking about the whole world. You're talking about, in this country, more than 300 million people. And I think a lot of people sort of get dismayed in terms of thinking, how do I, as one individual, have the opportunity to influence or impact something that's going to have influence on the behavior of millions of people, perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
Or how am I going to be able to convince these 434 people that I'm working with if you're in the House, or these 100 people if you're in the Senate? How do I convince them? So the process, you got an idea, and you start with maybe the person sitting next to you, or maybe some person that you think you want to go after, who got some similar idea, and you approach them and you begin to interact with them. And now you've got you and 3 other people. Then next week, you pick up 2 or 3 other people, and you circulate the idea and begin to get a group. So we have a whole lot of sign-on letters, and it's organized in such a way that you do have the opportunity to be heard. You do have the opportunity to put your ideas in front of different people at different times and convince them that what you're talking about is rational.
Yeah, but and how does that work, Congressman, in terms of how has that shifted over time from when you initially got into Congress to now, in terms of being able to have productive and respectful conversations, particularly across this divisive political spectrum that we have between left and right? And how does that functioning right now? It doesn't seem like it's functioning very well. And how has that shifted over time? Are you able to have conversations with people from the other side of the aisle?
Some of the legislation, for example, that I've managed to get passed in a legislative way, have had strong support from Republicans, as well as, I take one act that I think I'm probably known more for than any other, may be the Second Chance Act. And Senator Rob Portman, who was a Republican, was the lead Republican even before he went to the Senate and was in the House. And he was well positioned within the ranks of the Republican Party. He was from Ohio. And he believed in the work and the opportunity of restorative justice. So he was the lead in the Senate. And, of course, President Bush was the president who ended up signing the bill.
George W.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And it's now it's more challenging because the country is more divided. And I would have to say, without any fear of contradiction, that the current president has added a great deal to the divisiveness of the country and has rolled back some of the progress that was being made in terms of bringing the country closer together in order to reach agreement on things. And so, yep, it is most unfortunate that rather than going forward, it's as though things have been going backwards. And I think much of the friction is because thoughts and ideas have been advanced, that we get to a point, and rather than continuing to go forward, I don't know any challenges that we have totally licked. I'm saying we've made some progress. But if we're rolling back the progress that we've made, say in health, there are still many diseases that we don't have a cure for, and we don't know how to cure them. And so if we snatch the research money away and halt the research, then those scientists who are doing it can't continue their work. So rather than reaching another level towards a solution to sickle cell anemia or cancer or Parkinson's disease or whatever it is, we either stand still or we go backward. And that's most unfortunate. Race relations, as another example, the history of this country, and many of us recognize it and know it, where some individuals, some groups of individuals were brought here not because we wanted to come. And we're talking about ancestors who were brought here as slaves or indentured servants, but certainly not as equal citizens. And we made some progress towards equalizing and moving. We're still not there, but rather than going forward, I think the current administration is taking us backwards.
Yeah.
And I don't know anybody, I don't know any groups that are going to just sit by and let that happen to them without fighting back, without saying, that you just can't possibly accept it without fighting back as much as you can.
Oh, and there's been no real acknowledgement on the federal level of what slavery was all about, how the beginnings of this country were built on it. It was part of the economy. And it's so many the idea that just in an interview the other day I did with Dr. Christina Rivers of DePaul University that has expertise in African American history, voting rights, gerrymandering, and incarceration. She says very plainly that the "I Have a Dream" speech of Dr. King, the first part of that speech talks about him saying that we need a check for services rendered. It's a direct appeal for reparations. And that seems to be a no-brainer from my perspective and the perspectives of a lot of people. But yet it's like a no-touch type of a subject matter on the federal level. That seems absolutely imperative and the thing to do, but yet we can't seem to even bring that up. And it's a real shame.
It's as if it never existed.
Yes, exactly.
And then my blood boils when I hear individuals attempt to make excuses for slavery.
Oh my
and say that, well, maybe it wasn't so bad, and that maybe there were some good features. And I'm saying, how can you? I mean, can you even imagine it?
Yes.
I mean,
The gumption to say something like that is staggering and blows me away. And then I'm sure, coming from your perspective, particularly someone who actually was in cotton fields picking cotton to now becoming a congressman, it just blows me away. Your perspective, that must be so visceral to you because you're a descendant of this era and you've actually done what slaves did, which was pick cotton, and now you're in the congressional halls and making legislation, and you're realizing just how out of touch so many people are to what actually were the beginnings of this country, which was a massive kidnapping and traumatizing under horrifying circumstances for hundreds of years. And then comments like that roll off the tongue. You realize, wow, there's a huge disconnect here.
I think the notion of faith and belief and hope and knowing that, I think of the song that Sam Cooke made so popular. It may be a long time coming, but I know some change is going to come.
Well, yeah. And I remember when I interviewed you about my father, you mentioned that. And this Second Chance Act, which you mentioned before, I was just wondering, what specifically did that allow for? I know you talked about restorative justice, and this is a very notable accomplishment for you. What did it allow people to do to get a second chance after being incarcerated, I'm assumed, to get back and integrated into society in some way? Was that as a response to the 1994 crime bill, or was that separate and apart from that?
Well, it was all weaved in together. The fact of the matter is, and the facts are, that we, the United States of America, are the most incarcerated nation on the face of the earth. There's no other country in the world that have the same experiences that we've had in incarcerating and holding. Right now, today, there's 2.2 million people in our country incarcerated. And of course, many of them, some of them even unfairly. I'm saying there are always numbers of people who maintain, and they keep maintaining, that they didn't get a fair shake in the process of making that determination. I mean, I've seen people sit and cry and just you don't know what to say to them.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And there's and with the incarceration rate being so high, it affects all of the United States, but it clearly, statistically, disproportionately affects the Black population. And then it's no accident that is happening, I believe. And it's part of a system at play. And also, unfortunately, you look at the huge wealth gap in this country. And again, getting back to Dr. King, the conventional view is that we have this colorblind society, and a lot of what he was talking about has been whitewashed, and that's not where he was coming from at all. And he's lauded as this person talking about we should be judged by the content of our character. That's a beautiful thing in and of itself, but let's also talk about all the other stuff he was saying regarding race-based issues and race-based solutions, and things like affirmative action and DEI that are now being vilified and misconstrued. I mean, it's totally ridiculous. With DEI, my understanding was that was implemented just to give people a fair shake that were clearly systematically being not given a fair shake. And so now there's this whole deliberate misunderstanding of it, putting forth in the public arena of, oh, well, you're putting unqualified people in jobs. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Would you speak to that a little bit, Congressman?
Let me tell you, that just roils. Thinking of what individuals may have gone through, of what individuals may have had to do. And as an individual who believes greatly in intelligence, expertise, training, knowing how, following process and procedures. Hey, I get that. If I didn't, I never would have spent all of the hours trying to learn whatever it is that I've attempted to learn. And yet you knew that you had not reached the penthouse, that you were still in the basement. And so while I mention progress, I don't ever want to suggest that we have made it to the penthouse when we're still in the basement.
Exactly.
We're just getting started.
Totally.
Then to snuff that out and pretend that these things have never existed, that somehow or another the records are inaccurate.
Yeah.
And that, I've had the good fortune to just know certain kind of people. I knew Ernie Banks and met with Ernie Banks a few times and talked about and Ernie was saying, so, I'm really trying to get some of the younger athletes who now are earning money that he didn't earn in terms of he wasn't starving or anything. He did all right. He's a good baseball player.
For those of you who don't know, a star baseball player back in the day, not familiar with Ernie Banks, he played most of his career, if not all of it, with the Cubs, right?
That's right. But now there are people who, get contracts of 25, 30 million, 100 million over an extended period of time. And he was just saying, oh, it would be great if I could bring a bunch of these gentlemen and ladies now also together to just invest in certain things that would be helpful and all of that. And as people are moving up, there are elements trying to push them down
all the time,
as opposed to recognizing the talent, skill, ability, and hard work they've put in order to be able to do what they do. And having to counter that, and say, no, you're wrong. We really did put in the time. We did. We stayed up late at night. We did struggle.
Yes.
And having to overcome and to, as Dr. King would say, have a certain feeling about having to do it, and this notion that can't we all come together for the good of our country, or for the good or the notion of brother and sisterhood, how much we could advance rather than doing what I call the Watusi, making,
See,
one step forward and two steps back.
Oh, I know. And it just makes me think, and also there's the 14th Amendment and all these other laws that are purposely misconstrued, particularly the 14th Amendment that was really put forth to protect African people that were in the United States, as well as recently freed slaves that was co-opted by corporate interests in terms of creating peoplehood. And then there was all types of, now there's been attacks on the Voting Rights Act, etc., and the misconstruing of DEI. And I'm just wondering, you're a man of faith, and I think your faith and your religious perspective and experience helps ground you to a degree. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And I would imagine dealing with what you're dealing with in Congress and some of these attitudes that are so painfully ignorant, as you were talking about just a few minutes ago. How could they say this? How could they not know? How could people have this perspective, almost sweeping slavery under the rug, so to speak, or mitigating the horrendous conditions of this ongoing terrorism? Like, what keeps you grounded to be patient with folks and not be, just straight up hostile? How do you do that?
Well, I think that faith gives you the perspective of believing that change will come, but it only comes when you're in serious pursuit. And, for example, Democrats are trying to look at the whole question of redistricting, but as a protective element. Even faith says that you've got to protect yourself. And so I love the way the state of New York is looking at their redistricting plan. Texas has done what Texas has done. But there's no way we can sit by and let Texas and other, whatever you want to call them, the way they think, get away with doing this. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, but good in another way. And that is engaging the people to make a determination that in order to protect what we've learned in all of these years, since the beginning of the country, that laws ought to be generated by the people from a bottoms-up perspective. And that's the way to do it. So California, right on to you, and create as many Democratic-leaning districts as you can, not because you want to, not because you believe that this is the most dignified way to do it, but in war, I guess you have to use warlike tactics.
Well, you know, it seems like, Congressman, you're part minister and part warrior, to be honest with you. You have to be, and you have to be a tactician, and you have to be brutally honest with yourself. And I think that's why you and my father, Sid, could relate, because you probably had some pretty candid conversations about the landscape that you were operating in, particularly with Harold Washington.
And we had the fun of being the MCs at those great big events at the pavilion at the University of Illinois. Oh, those were that you know, I just, every time I think about it, I feel a sense of pride to have been a part and to be a part of that, and to think of having these great mentors like Sid and Harold Washington and people that my generation got an opportunity to experience, to know, and be a part of. I mean, that's part of the wonders of America.
Well, I remember you talking to me about this years ago, how you're it seemed almost impossible to create these. I think there were a couple rallies at UIC that were somewhat pivotal in the election of Mayor Washington initially. And when you first started talking about it, nobody really thought it was possible. And apparently, as if memory serves, my father was saying, "Hey, we can do this. We can do this." And it usually just takes one person that's a little bit out of their mind and can see possibility and say, "I'm just putting my flag in the ground, declaring this as so, and declaring that this is a possibility, no matter how huge the challenges are." And then next thing you know, you started hearing them, some other people started hearing them, and next thing you know, there was a plan put in place and the wheels were in motion. And fast forward, these rallies happened where people were bussed in, and from what I understand, they were consequential to having the first Black mayor of Chicago.
They were indeed, and I think we're beginning to see people come together in that fashion, because it seems to me that there are only two ways to stop the erosion and the planned effort to take us backwards. One, of course, is the engagement of the people to the extent where Mr. Trump and his allies will know unequivocally and without a doubt that they may hold the cards today, but they won't hold those cards continuously with the enactment of their engagement. And they're not going to win. They're going to lose. And because the people united will never be defeated. And they are helping to unite people in opposition to their bizarre behavior. And
that's a good way of putting it.
So
it is bizarre.
They're coming. I mean, Illinois is a good state. Illinois is a different kind of state, but Illinois is not off the chart. I was totally surprised when I looked up at the end of the election and saw that Donald Trump had gotten 46% of the vote in Illinois. I mean, and so we gotta not only put a stop to it, but we've got to make sure that they know that there's no point in making Illinois a target, because the more they target, the more we're going to resist. And Illinois has come too far. We've struggled too hard. We fought too long, that we just cannot allow, by any stretch of imagination, any erosion, no matter how it's planned, no matter what it is that they attempt to use. We've become accustomed to some openness. We've become accustomed to people being resilient. We've become accustomed, and that's not to suggest that perfection has been with us, but hope and possibility have been. And we've seen, like Martin said, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
I really think that faith really plays a huge part in your perspective and allowing you to keep going in the face of tremendous adversity. Am I off base there, Congressman? Because how else do you stay grounded? Because some of these pushes are there's this incremental progress, and how do you stay focused on the bigger picture? I think faith really does play a role in that. And I think that came up when we were talking last time about my father's show, Jubilee Showcase, and gospel music, and just that whole aura of spirituality. Would that be safe to say that this helps keep you grounded and moving forward?
I would think so. Actually, we didn't have a lot of books around when I was a kid. Where I lived, there were just certain things we did not have. But I did learn to read early in life. And the one book that we always had was the Bible. We always had a Bible. And so there were certain principles, and I read it a lot. And we even had something called KYB Club, Know Your Bible Club. And you'd, have assignments to read, and you'd want to read. And the more you read, the more you'd want to read even more. And remembering some of that as a child, and having, just read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, Esther, Matthew, Mark, and all of that. But then putting in context what some of that may have meant.
Oh my gosh.
I can remember my father, who sort of developed a reputation of helping people through difficult decision making. And if somebody came to him and they thought they had been abused, shortchanged, or something just wasn't going right, his favorite guy in the Bible was Job. And he would say, "You think you had a hard time?"
Right.
So you think you got messed over? You think you should have been on the first team and the coach wouldn't let you play?
Perspective is everything.
Yeah, he said, well, think of Job.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And you know what's also really startling in this country, that it's always perplexed me, is the way in which the teachings of Jesus have been misconstrued and seems to have been co-opted to a large degree for really nefarious ends. My wife grew up in a pretty religious household, and she's still a devout Catholic, and I'm Jewish. We raised our kids as Jewish and Catholic, which is totally an anomaly, which is crazy. But we did it, and I think our kids are way more accepting than most folks and grounded in a lot of ways. So I'm very grateful for that. But what's interesting about Jesus is really he wasn't about oppressing people. He was about helping people. He was about loving other people. And it doesn't surprise me that you've always been a person of faith and grew up reading the Bible, because you also had a lot of work with healthcare. I mean, I think you're deeply involved in community healthcare center movements, and that seemed to be a personal priority for you. And extrapolating through the years, dealing with underserved communities specifically, which is a huge problem. We have the incarceration rate, which is crazy, but also we have a healthcare issue that needs to be addressed in this country. But also, with the ACA, could you speak to a bit of your work in that regard?
Well, the idea that one would have certain rights, that rights and privileges. And I sometimes say, and everybody should have their opinions, but opinions are different than facts. and you have the right to even be wrong.
Totally.
And so without the feeling that you can be a whole person, that you are in control of your thoughts and your actions. I'm also a big lover of the spoken word. I mean, and some of the concepts I was just thinking of a poem in Victor's, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole. I think what gods there may be for my unconquerable soul, that my soul, I am the possessor of, and I ought to be able to make decisions and to think as I'm directed to think based upon whatever is inside of me, but also whatever is good for me should be good for others. I'm saying, if I have a right to my opinion, others have a right to their opinions. And we ought to be able to reach some common ground. Like when it comes to politics and all, I always say that everything almost is kind of political. And if two people, for example, think the same all the time, then one of them is unnecessary.
Yes.
And so some politicizing goes on all the time, whether it's recognized as such. But it does, and it is. And civilized societies are able to accept that and make adjustments in such a way that some of what we end up doing is mine. Some of it is yours. Some of it is somebody else's. And yet we manage to coalesce enough to make reasonable, rational, and decent decisions.
That sounds so wonderful. But it almost, honestly, and I'm right. I'm totally in agreement with you, Congressman. It almost sounds like a fairy tale when we're talking about the United States legislative process, because I know, again, getting back to your advocacy with community health care, and all of that, and especially when the ACA was being, the Affordable Care Act was being debated, there was this incredible vitriol against people just having a sense of liberty to access just basic health care.
Yeah,
and it was staggering, so that they could just live decently. Just, we're not asking for pie in the sky, just a baseline level of access to some semblance of healthcare that is fundamental to the human experience. And
everybody gets sick.
Everybody at some point. And there's so many people that you get sick and then you're bankrupt, you lose your house, and your life starts spiraling down. And that doesn't happen in other countries. And, it just seems as though there's so many forces that are preventing that from happening. And, it seems like a means of control. The incentive structures in this country seem completely antithetical to empowering people. If they don't have access to healthcare, you can't live. You can't live. And so you've done a lot of grassroots advocacy for community health centers, and you were pretty involved in the ACA, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, things keep emerging. I mean, it's kind of like every man's death diminishes me. I know for whom the bells toll. They toll for thee. We were moving towards assisting underdeveloped nations. And, there's a drawback. And why would we do that? Why? Let's stop funding NATO. Let's stop trying to be the world leader as opposed to becoming the world's dictator to go along with other dictatorships, and a little group of us can decide what the world order is. I mean, that seems to be pretty selfish, and not allow the flow of ideas and thoughts to. So yeah, I've had wonderful experiences. Matter of fact, we met with Kofi Annan, a little group of us had a chance to do that. I think it was the last public meeting that he had before he passed away. And so,
could you just tell for our viewers who Kofi Annan is?
He was, of course, the head of the United Nations, and the world arbiter for some causes and strategic thinking around how nations can come together and make some decisions that relate not just to some nations, but as many nations as can be influenced or impacted. I guess one, being a diplomat is a good piece of work that needs a lot of leadership and a lot of doing. So,
yeah, I that would be a very difficult role to be in today, especially how do you represent the United States right now as a diplomat? It must be very difficult. And I know that also, just to pivot, if I may, education, which is critical to understanding the world around you, has been another consistent theme of your work. You've been a champion for equitable funding for HBCUs. And, there's a huge achievement gap in this country along racial lines. And I think you've been instrumental in major investments being given to HBCUs.
We added another group of colleges and universities called PBIs, predominantly Black institutions.
Oh, okay.
And we've also got HSIs. And we considered that a real feat because these institutions actually have more students even than HBCUs. The HBCUs, of course, are historical and have played a tremendous role and continue to. But we have in the Chicago area alone, I guess about 8 or 9 of these institutions that are PBIs. Malcolm X College, Kennedy King College, Chicago State University, Robert Morris College before it kind of collapsed into being a part of the University of Illinois, South Suburban College, Chicago State. It's about 75 of these across the country. And so we were very pleased that they now have status, not the same status as HBCUs, but status that allows them to apply for special grant monies that can assist and does assist and has helped them. Education nowadays, if you don't have it, if you don't have understanding of the technology, if you don't have or have not been able to keep up, it's going to be very difficult to earn a livelihood, especially a decent livelihood.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. AI, I had this conversation with a dear friend of mine the other day that he was saying, it seems like we as humans create systems that initially are here to serve us, but that seem to be part of their the incentive structure within the systems are to get rid of the human element. And AI seems to be the epitome of this, which is very concerning. So how do we educate people that are able to not only earn a living, but also broaden their understanding of the human experience? That's not an easy objective to achieve at all. And I had a few other broad questions, and I wanted to ask you a bit about your relationship with my father, but also, you've been in Congress again, as we said before, for almost 3 decades. How has your approach in legislating evolved from the beginning to now? Has your approach changed at all, or have you just confirmed what you've always done?
Well, we take an idea. I do as many town halls, as many group discussions as I can, and listen to what people raise as issues and as need. I also try to look at my district in terms of what the district needs. Much of downtown Chicago is my district, which means all of the communities near downtown Chicago. Greektown is mine. Chinatown is mine.
Oh, okay.
Ukrainian village is mine. I have a large number of educational institutions in my district, probably about 20 colleges and universities, institutions of higher learning, more hospitals than any other single district in the country, 23 of them, 4 medical schools. Of course, we have low-income communities, wealthy communities, suburban communities, different types of suburban communities. And so when I try and discern the need areas that need plussing up, training, one of the groups in the district that have the most problems, the most trouble, the most difficulty is African American males who somehow or another fall through many of the cracks that exist. So trying to figure out a way, I'd love to make sure that every child in America had access to early childhood education. And we've seen monies taken away, and we've had to fight to try to keep what we've got. But if every child could get a head start, could get an early beginning, so that every parent, if every parent that needs child care could have it so that the parent is eligible now to go out and work and have a job. One of the most delightful things that we've done lately was in 2021 when we enhanced the child tax credit so that any parent who had a child 5 years and under who earned under $75,000 a year was getting $300 a month from the federal government. If the child was 6 and under 17, they were getting $250. If the family was a double parent family, if they didn't earn more than $150,000 combined, they got those same benefits. We only did that for 1 year. And when the Republicans got back in charge, of course, they cut that out. I'm saying if we could begin at the early stages of life to provide young people with what they need to compete with the rest of society, every single person, I think it would make our country so much better and do so much more until it's not funny. And maintain the safety net activity that is being seriously threatened.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. And it seems to, and there is a proactive and aggressive effort to do that. And that has not let up and actually has gotten more aggressive, particularly right now. And as you were talking, you know, you've been involved in the legislative process for so long. And I was just curious, what are some of the behind the scenes realities of passing meaningful legislation that the public may not understand? Because it's very easy to criticize from an outside perspective and look at politicians as, oh, they're all of them are corrupt to a degree, which is ridiculous. A lot of people, it's a systemic thing, and yes, there is corruption for sure, but in order to weave your way through the legislative process, you're going to have to make relationships that you may not, want to make normally, and you may have to make strange bedfellows to pass legislation. What are some of those realities that the public may not understand?
Well, I think the good part of it is the why. Serving on the Ways and Means Committee, our primary responsibility is to figure out, how do you pay for whatever it is that government does? How do you pay for it? Right? I mean, and many people don't delve into that. But the purpose of all these rescissions and cuts and cutbacks is to be able to give a tax break to the wealthiest individuals in the country. Mm-hmm. You got to get money from somewhere. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Frederick Douglass was fond of saying was that if he didn't know anything else, he did know one thing, and that is, in this country, in this society, you may not get everything that you pay for, but you will most certainly pay for everything that you get. Mm-hmm. There is no free lunch in a capitalistic society. There's no free anything. Everything costs something. And so the question becomes, who will pay for what? If you're going to give billionaires and millionaires big tax breaks where they're not paying a fair share, and at the same time reduce the resources for the safety net program, that's not a good thing. No. Or cut the number of people who work. For example, if you lay off staff, people cannot get the services that they need. And so the postal service is terrible. I mean, because there aren't enough people doing what they need. Mm-hmm. Internal Revenue Service, if you got a check coming back, you probably have not gotten it. Mm. And you may not know when you're going to get it. Mm-hmm. If you're sitting in line for a service at the Social Security office, you may have to wait 3 hours, as I did the other day with the person that I went with who has a disability. Oh, wow. And I just went to help them through the process. But I'm saying, if the services are not being provided because we're not generating enough tax money to make it happen, then if we've got a problem with the tariffs in terms of the consumers being hit with price increases where you're paying more for a dozen eggs, for a carton of milk, or you're throwing food away that farmers can't sell because we've cut the SNAP benefits. And rather than selling this and using it for people to eat, you're throwing it away because you can't sell it. You can't, and the farmers are not getting the best prices for what they grow. Then the quality of life diminishes. And that's what we're faced with right now.
I bet the realities, it sounds like what you're basically saying is the realities of this terrain are way more intense and difficult to traverse than people could ever really imagine. And it's very, very daunting. That's why it's amazing that you keep pushing forward and have accomplished so many wonderful things in the name of helping folks. And I was wondering if looking back on the trajectory of all of your service in Congress, if you could give when you first started, if you could give your younger self some advice on your congressional career, what would you say?
It would have been a hope that
it's harder than you think.
Yeah, but it's good to start as early, especially if you're going to be in the legislative branch. I mean, for example, I got a birthday, but if I had gotten there 10 years sooner, then especially in the legislative arena, seniority, length of time in service, opportunity to know and learn the processes, opportunity to build relationships and generate relationships with others.
I'm sure that's
all
critical.
Of those, those are all factors that, like right now, we're working with Republicans on some health thing. And of course, I co-chair the caucus on sickle cell. We've made a lot of progress in sickle cell. Our main Republican ally retired this past term. And new Republicans know that we're interested, so they've called and reached out to us and say, would you like to work with me on a sickle cell bill? And of course, yes. And it makes sense in terms of you need to have bipartisanship, but you need to have as much leadership sometime coming from members of the party that's in the majority. I mean, that's kind of a reality. And so I'm partnering with Republicans on 2 health bills that we're working on right now.
Wow.
We may have them ready to introduce, if not by the end of the day, maybe next week.
Really?
And
great.
So there are some, and because child welfare, I rank as the ranking member on the subcommittee dealing with family support and some child welfare, homelessness, and SSI. And I just met with the commissioner of the Social Security Administration day before yesterday to follow up on some ideas about changing some of the process things that hopefully. So, And Representative Darren LaHood is the chairman of that subcommittee. He's also from Illinois. And Representative LaHood and I have a wonderful working relationship. And given the fact that child welfare really deals with children, we're sometimes able to reach agreement. So we're hoping to continue that, and that we'll be able to do some meaningful work on adoption. Next week we have our angels, called Angels in Adoption. And I had a family last year who have raised 27 children other than their own 5. And they currently have 4 teenage boys who are 16 living with them. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful family. They were decreed angels in adoption last year, and they are indeed angels.
That's incredible.
And all of these children, they've done it, James and Carol Martin. And so there are a lot of good things going on in spite of the negative things that are happening. So we'll just have to take the good, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess around with Mr. In Between.
Yes, for sure. I also wanted to, and I know our time is moving along here, so I didn't want to miss an opportunity to ask you about your involvement with the Congressional Black Caucus. Could you give us the broad strokes of your experience on what that is, what kind of an impact that has made, and your involvement with that in Congress? That seems to be a very important group of legislators.
Let me tell you, it has increased to the point where now we have 60 members, and we're going to work as hard as we can to try and not lose any of those, although the Texas redistricting, the Ohio redistricting, and there may be something that goes on in other places that will make this challenging. But we've reached the point where many of these individuals represent districts that are not majority minority, that they're not a majority. For example, my district does not have a majority Black population. I'd say that it has a Black voting majority population. But so progress is race and ethnicity still play major roles in people being elected in this country, especially at local levels. And that's going to continue for a long time, I would imagine. But they're not as dominant. I'm saying individuals have the opportunity to work their whole districts. I go into every community in my district. I interact with every racial or ethnic population that have interest and insights. We work with all of them. All people are important to me, no matter what their race or ethnic background. I try and represent them all to the best of my ability.
Sure.
And they have returned the interest in terms of having voted for me, some of them 15 times.
Right.
And I appreciate it.
Well, it seems that but just getting back to the Congressional Black Caucus, they play a unique role in the legislative body, specifically, for instance, with the Voting Rights Act that has been gutted, unfortunately, by the Supreme Court, taking away Section 5. And, they are able to put forth some perspectives that are, as we referenced earlier in our conversation, that are sadly missing in our public debate. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, we are indeed the conscience of the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
We call ourselves that, and we believe that we are that. Mm. And there are others who call us that, and we are a large caucus among Democrats in the Congress. We now have 4 members of the Senate, which is the most that we've ever had at one time. We have 2 African American senators who are male and 2 who are female. Of course, Illinois kind of led the way in that because Illinois elected Carol Moseley Braun.
Yes, they did.
To be the first female African American woman in the Senate. So we've got to keep moving, though. I make reference a lot to this notion of not getting to the basement and acting like we're in the penthouse. And so progress is being made, but we cannot believe that we're where we need to be, where we ought to be. We are a great part of this country. We helped build this country. Our foreparents invested in the country without being paid. And so we've come a long way. But of course, we have much further to go.
I just wish. Absolutely. As the more you're talking, I'm just thinking, boy, what a conversation! What would a conversation be like with you and my father right now about this time happening at this place, and what kind of strategizing would be created to deal with the current situation and move things forward? Because I think you two were largely on the same page politically, generally, right?
Our ages would have put us in circumstances where we understood and saw some things occur that younger individuals just would not have had the experience to see.
Right.
But we've also seen how individuals of similar thought and similar mind were able to work cooperatively together to bring about some of these changes that we can take credit for. Knowing that, the water is still deep, the barriers are still great. There are enemies lurching.
Yes.
But there is still the opportunity, if you believe, and if you believe, we put that in perspective. I believe that America still has the chance to become and to be what our foreparents dreamed about, that all people could be equal. Not that just all men are created equal, because they didn't believe that when they wrote that.
Right, totally. Totally. I mean, It seems like, there was a clear misunderstanding of what they were doing to some degree, but it sounded really good. But if we could actually adhere to that in a real and genuine way, it'd be incredible.
Or even get close to it.
Yes.
I mean, women did not get the right to vote in this country until about 100 years, a little more than 100 years ago. And they wrote this in 1776. And so it took a long time. And of course, some African Americans were actually counted in the census as being only 3/5 of a person.
Totally.
And so they certainly didn't mean them. And so, but notwithstanding, this faith business crops in. And I always say, I've had some good days. I've had some bad days. I've had some hills to climb. I've had some lonely nights. But rather than complaining, I will keep working towards that goal of equity, fair treatment, and the opportunity for open expression as the way to go.
I think that's wonderful. And, I just wanted to make sure to ask you a couple questions about my father before we wrap up, Congressman. And thank you so much for your time. I'm very grateful for having this second opportunity to be able to spend time with you. And I was just wondering if you could give the broad strokes of getting back to my father. And I've asked you about Jubilee Showcase before, but specifically with regard to the Harold Washington campaign, because that election was so pivotal, not just in Chicago politics, but also national politics. I mean, Barack Obama credits that as creating a pathway for him to reach the White House. And I was just wondering if you could give our listeners some basic fundamental idea of what type of an influence my father, Sid Ordauer, had on the election of Mayor Harold Washington, and what he brought to the table and what kind of a difference it made.
Well, Sid was actually one of Harold's best friends, in addition to being engaged in the election itself, because Sid had been engaged long before the election. And we got Harold to the point of being the candidate and to the point of being our hope for a brighter future, and had felt that way for some time. As a matter of fact, Harold had run before. That was not Harold's first run.
Right.
That was Harold's second run. And Sid was there in the first run. Sid had a big audience with his showcase, and people knew Sid, and some people just knew him from that perspective. But those of us who were political and social activists knew Sid from his activism as well as Jubilee Showcase.
Right.
I'm saying some folks probably didn't go for quartet singing that much or whatever, but there were those who did, and there were those activists who started viewing the showcase because they knew Sid from activism.
Right.
So it was a combination. He was a strategist. He invested. I can remember times when there wouldn't be any money around to do something. And Sid would pony up more than most of us. Because he may have had access, but we'd take up collection.
Sure. And speaking of him as a strategist, I've heard over and over again from various people I've talked to that his skills with strategizing were pretty significant.
He had ideas. He was creative. He had thoughts. He could think of ways to do something that we may be talking about, what we needed to do. And so he was an intimate of the movement. He wasn't just a player. He was a leader, although he didn't try to lead. I'm saying he knew how to take ideas that others may put on the table and make it work and make it happen. So he was an all-around beloved individual who was just as much a part of the group with Harold and Gus and
Gus Savage
Johnson, and the whole group. So he was just a part. He was a part of the group, just as comfortable with the group as the group was comfortable with him.
Yeah, I'm glad he was around, because I would fear that if from the way you and other people have been talking about, and I know that my father was involved in the election of Mayor Washington as well as Carol Mosley Braun, and I believe he was involved in your political campaign and very supportive. If he wasn't there, who knows what would have happened. I'm not saying that things would have gone quite a bit differently, but it sounds to me that is a distinct possibility, and it's really interesting to get to know him now through the perspectives of other people, and I really appreciate your insight. And I'm just wondering, Congressman, as we wrap up, and I know you've decided to step down after almost 3 decades of service in the legislature, a lot of community activism, serving in the Cook County Board of Commissioners and as alderman of the city of Chicago. as you look back on your career, which will be, you still got about a year and a half left or so. What are your most pressing things that you want to push forward? And also, I think you've touched on this before, but if you could give us a basic broad strokes of how you'd like to be remembered in terms of your legacy.
Well, I'd like to be thought of as one who tried to advance humanity and promote humaneness through the political process. I would hope that the community that I've represented will send to complete some of the work that I've done a delightful young legislator whose values appear to me to be very similar. So I'm hoping that people will send LaShawn Ford.
I was going to ask you about it. Okay.
Yeah, that they will send him to Washington. He's young enough to develop serious seniority.
As you mentioned before.
Serious seniority, does become a factor.
Yes.
He's grounded enough to recognize how certain conditions impact the community. And he has been working on those and will continue to work on those. And that I will be remembered as one who tried to help educate the community to have a real grasp on self-interest political decision making. And that just means making decisions to reflect the needs of the people for which they are decided. And then to put every ounce of energy, hard work and effort into it. And to know that I've loved every minute. I appreciate their engagement and faith that they've put in me. And I hope that I've served them well.
Oh, that's great. Well, you are a blessing, Congressman. I so appreciate your time and all of your contributions to all of us on many, many levels. And LaShawn Ford has some big shoes to fill, and you must see a lot in him, a lot of promise, because if you're not on the mission, you're not suited for this role. You really have to be mission driven, in my humble opinion, to make any type of a difference, because the obstacles are significant to enacting real change that really helps people. And so with that said, we appreciate you, Congressman Danny Davis. Thank you so much for being here. It's a real pleasure to speak to you again. And I can't wait to hear about your health initiatives that will be coming out within the next few days or so, right? Hopefully.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's exciting. That's really exciting. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, or a parting shot before we go?
The only thing is that there's a lot of ground to be plowed. Expressing my southern roots.
Yes,
so,
boy.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And that is quite the understatement. A lot of ground to be plowed. Well, thank you, Congressman Danny Davis. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. Take care of yourself, and I look forward to hearing about your legislation in the coming days.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Peace and blessings. Thank you for tuning into the show. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe to hear more compelling episodes on Rhythm of Life, and keep an eye out for our upcoming series of how we as a society often incentivize all the wrong behavior here in the United States. We see this in the healthcare industry, the media, and in our educational systems, to name a few of the fields we will be covering. We will also be launching another podcast very soon called Ambiology that takes a look at the left-right political spectrum from a historical perspective. It will be a deep dive into this paradigm that is conventionally thought of as static, but has shifted significantly over time. Ambiology will also examine the significant role public relations, also known as propaganda, has played in shaping perspectives on critical issues in the country. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and review so more people can hear about us, and share about Rhythm of Life on social media, and like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening. I'm Steve Ordauer.
This has been a Rhythm and Light production.